Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Bafo. In this podcast, I speak to Africans from across a multitude of sectors, including business, art, culture, media, design, technology, advertising, and everything in between, delving into their journeys and reflecting on the lessons they have learned along the way. It's about gaining insight into why and how they do what they do. These conversations offer a treasure trove of takeaways on a wide range of topics, including craft, relationships, wellness, parenting, entrepreneurship, and much more. Okay, so my guest today is considered a veteran of South Africa's music and entertainment industry with more than 20 years of leadership experience spanning artist management, major labels, industry bodies, and large-scale events. That's the formal part. My guest is Refiloe Ramogase. Welcome, sir.
It's so weird for you to call me a veteran. I mean, like, you're
But
like
yeah, you're now an OG.
Yeah, right. Clearly so. Just wild because, like, I consider you like an older brother. So when your older brother says a veteran, it's always interesting. But yeah, thank you.
We have known each other, over 20 years?
Well over 20.
Like heading for 30 years.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I was like, okay, what's the first thing I'm going to ask? I thought, let me start in an interesting space.
Yeah.
We'll get into the work and we'll get into that journey. But how do you make co-parenting look so smooth?
Man, I just have the most awesome ex-wife. She's like, you talk about striking the lotto, right? In terms of the parent lotto. Papama is that person for me. And I just think that we always made sure that we kept the main thing. And the main thing was always about making sure that we had very adjusted kids. And yeah, I think parenting in and of itself, as they always say, is an act of sacrifice. It's about making sure that you steward these young lives and make sure that they get to a place with as minimal therapy time as humanly possible. So, I think that because we kept the main thing, it feels like the kids will do some therapy, but not.
I mean, a common friend always says to me, like, we're at the stage where all of our children are going to do therapy.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of what we do.
Exactly.
But like you say, it's about maybe minimizing it.
Yeah.
I don't know how successful I personally have been, but yeah, it's trying to create a foundation for a different type of therapy, less emergency therapy.
100%. Yeah, it's give and take, and I think that, look, as much as I might be flippant about it, a lot of work had to get into us getting here. I don't, no matter what, or how difficult, or how easy or difficult a separation is, there's going to be residual things that need to be dealt with, and you need to deal with those. And that's a personal responsibility. And you need to then be able to meet the other person on the other side of the healing that you need to do. And I think that we've both been quite intentional with that.
And because the healing is it's like that. It's like the old adage, in an airplane, put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
Yeah.
Before putting it on others.
Yeah.
And it requires you to have some, or make sense of certain hard truths about yourself as
Correct.
an individual before
Correct.
you can have that conversation with your partner or your ex, and before you can even give the best of yourself to the children.
Yeah. 100%.
So we'll meander.
We'll meander as we always do. These are conversations.
Yeah.
With
So,
Refiloe
you did political science and government.
Yeah.
Why did you end up there? Like as a teenager, what did, when I become grown up and I work, look like?
I knew I wanted to be a change agent. I guess the part I hadn't figured out was the how.
Okay.
When I got to the end of matric, I knew that I didn't want to be a doctor. And I think I knew that I wanted to do something that would involve leadership of some kind. And I knew that I wanted to do something that could move a needle. And I think, bearing in mind that I'm that unique generation that actually finished school in 1994, politics were very front and center of life, of discourse. We were literally the beginning, we were the first soldiers out the gate of this new dispensation. So, in as much as it might be a more muted thing now, where kids will talk to other priorities, it was like I have such incredible core memory recollections of moments like, for example, the night before Nelson Mandela gets released. And I remember how I ran through the streets of Deep Kloof barefoot with an ever jubilant mom of mine. This is the middle of the night. It just went on all night. You know, we were going from there to zone 4, from zone 4 to zone 1. And it just went on like that until he was released. That's 1990, that's 1991. These are formative years, you know. Then Codesa and all of these things are all going on. And I have all these chance encounters. I think Sacred Heart was an interesting place as well, insofar as Sacred Heart College was that school where a lot of the returning exile kids also then came to the school. So you have first-hand meetings with people who, I guess, are like bucket list encounters for others, right? But you're going to a play date, or you're going to go visit a friend, and Mama Winnie is there, or, you know, Dada Nelson is there, you know, and you get to experience these people firsthand, you know, the human side of them, the political side of them. So it was very much a front and center thing at that point in time. And I think that's where I was like, you know, these are people who are in my orbit, and I recognized the important work they had done, and I recognized that that work had to carry on. And that's how I get there, funny enough.
I mean, it does something very interesting to your lens. I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody very, very recently, and they were asking me about Lesotho. They'd been to Lesotho for the first time. It's a European guy. And I was explaining how, for me in the 80s in my high school, we had people from all over the world. And we had friends whose families were ambassadors, so they'd gone overseas, or they were overseas, and then they'd come back. And then I also had the opportunity to travel. I used to go to visit relatives in Germany. And so he was remarking on what it does for your lens of the world and how you see yourself within the world. And when you talk about Sacred Heart, like I know of the school, and I have quite a few friends who studied there. But it always seemed to be, the people that have gone to Sacred Heart always seem kind of very interesting. Like today, if you look across society, you are all in very interesting spaces.
Yeah.
From creative to business.
Yeah.
So there's also that underlying kind of creativity to it, but very different from National School of the Arts, because National School of the Arts felt it's very focused on performance and the arts, etc. Whereas there it had this underlying creativity.
True.
And it's interesting how you describe it, like your generation in particular, where you're now being exposed to these people, kids who families are coming back from exile, but what you're giving them is a look into what things were like when they were away.
Yeah.
But in a way that is more, let's say, relatable.
True.
Because I can imagine it's that whole adage of, you've been in exile and you come back and your family's maybe made sacrifices, but sometimes we forget the sacrifices that were made by those who never left.
True.
And I've seen it, and I've heard in certain instances where there's you'll find there's resentment. There's an element of resentment on both sides. But it feels like Sacred Heart gave all of you, a space where it's like a level playing field to a certain extent.
100%. And I like the way you framed that. I hadn't quite thought of it in that way, but 100%. And when I think specifically around that school and its significance, and I guess maybe for those that aren't familiar with the school, let me take some time to explain why it becomes this conducive situation. Let me start by acknowledging an incredibly profound impact on my life. A man by the name of Brother Neil McGurk. Brother Neil McGurk is the principal of Sacred Heart College through essentially the 70s into the 80s, into the 90s. Brother Neil McGurk is a Jesuit. It's not a priest, brother. Is a Jesuit brother who also is a nuclear physicist, like possibly one of the smartest human beings out there. Like, he has books. I wonder if he's published them, but I know that he grapples with the ideas. I mean, ideas that are way beyond my simple gray matter here around, the intersection between quantum physics and religion, right? Like, this is the level that this man operates and thinks at. But I had a very deep sense of social justice, I guess. One that I guess he can't operate in a vacuum. So within the school, true to Christian principles, which truly, in the truest sense of the word, sees the need to unite, they make a call in the late 70s to let Black children go to the school. I think it's the first school. I don't know if it's the first Catholic school. Again, I don't live in that era, but I know that it was one of the first in Johannesburg. I don't want to put it out there as the first and there's something else. And, a batch of kids go to that school, including, to your point, when you talk about these different walks of society, amongst the first 5 or so people who come to the school is Sim Chabalala, who's the Standard Bank CEO. You have the Molefe brothers, the Khomu brothers, Molefe and I think Dumi, There's the Mujaki, I think it was Sichaba Mujaki, who's late, my older brother Tabang Ramogase, and I can't remember who else. But these are the first cohort of people who come to the school. The thing I remember from stories as well as just from the feeling around the time when my brother comes to that school is you realize that my parents were taking risks because there were weird phone calls that would come in at late hours. There was tension. I remember Brother Neil coming in. And when I'd ask later on and inquire what was going on in that period, I'm getting this feedback from parents that they were getting death threats. They were essentially, because of the decision the school was making, and the assurances, and this is why I say what an incredible journey we've walked with the school, the assurance from the school, as if this thing goes pear-shaped, isn't this Brother Neil, I'll personally take these kids to Waterford myself. But trust us and walk this journey with us. So Sacred Heart is that school that bucks the trend. There's an incredible connection with the late Eric Mulobi, whose wife, Mama Marta, who's like a second mother to me, worked at the school. But prior to that, the school, for all intent and purposes, was hiding. So the security police would come looking for him and he'd be dressed as a gardener. So in certain instances, Uncle Eric used to essentially be housed and hidden by the school. So why am I going down this route? This is where you start to see the kind of molding of the relationship of the school with those who had, shall we say, radical political views for the time. And if you think about it, those are the people who made those sacrifices and stayed that you refer to. And a number of these kids, as I go on to learn, their parents are start subsequently sending their kids to these schools. And even the very act of people like my parents taking us to those schools at the risk of their own lives and the risk of their kids' lives is an act of sacrifice in and of itself for a greater understanding of what then becomes of this country. Not clear when it'll happen, but making that kind of sacrifice. So by the time 1990 comes, it's a logical choice that a lot of these exiles probably have heard good things about the school, and decide to then also bring their kids in there. And the school also leans forward and says, we want to be able to take people in, because it was not even a money thing. Because a lot of these, a lot of people think, when you think about names like Mandela, or these are guys who sacrificed even financial gain. These are guys who were on the bones of their ... in that time. And these schools were making a call to say, we will educate your children. Come through. So that's the enabling environment that then creates this place where we can seamlessly coexist. Because you're absolutely right. When you think around the inzal-exile conversation, it's played out in so many ways and forms, even on the political stage, where you can see specific factions that have played out where that very resentment you speak to lives. So that's what made that school a very, very conducive environment. And again, I can tell you so many stories during the time when we're at that school where I should have been expelled for being uppity. What does Tyler calls it? Uppity. Uppity African, right? Because, you've got to understand, we're talking about the 80s. Talking back to a white person, standing your ground against white people, these are not things that outside of those schools were allowed to happen. But the school always fairly adjudicated on matters where we would stand up for ourselves. So a really incredible school. I think more needs to be done to tell that story formally, because I think it is such an important part of that history of transition, this school, and Brother Neil McGurk in particular. Like, I cannot tell you enough about how much that man shaped my life.
I think about it, like I said, I know, the more I think about the number of people I know that have come through that school. In different generations. Correct.
Kensi Manganyi, Shomla Dandala, you name them, Tibbs, Mutswane, you name them. So many.
And what everybody's done with their lives after that. I think that's the key to it. I think also, to a certain extent, part of the conversations that I often have, which is around, how do we tell our stories? How do we package our stories? What are the stories that we need to tell? There's stories like this that tend to be an afterthought. And so in archiving and in documenting our history across the continent, like each country, each city, each space, it's important to find those and start to figure out how to document them. The problem is that the drive to document it has a commercial and a financial imperative. So you'll find that we don't, I think even more so in this day and age, we don't actually start the process because we have to figure out how to monetize it first.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking about my school in Lesotho, Macheveng High School, which became Macheveng College. And I think of the time that I was there. Waterford Kamhlaba in Eswatini, which was our sister school. And the stories from there. In Botswana, Maruapula, there was a school I was supposed to go do my A-levels then, because I have an uncle there, a good friend of my father's, and it never happened, but St. John's in Harare.
Yes, I've heard about that school.
And I've never been, I've never seen the school, but I was literally a week away from being shipped off to Harare. And the stories of those spaces is in the stories of the people who were touched by them. But we need to follow that thread back to look at the foundation. So what you've just talked about, that's the foundation. And we don't document that stuff enough. It's not, because it doesn't feel sexy enough, I guess.
100%. And again, I often, I remember when that moment happened. I remember a very interesting interaction. Won't mention names. I don't want to do the whole name dropping thing, but a very prominent political figure. We were at their home and we were with their kids and grandkids. And this is a man who absolutely sacrificed everything, right? And he couldn't understand why his grandkids weren't card-carrying members of his party. And he proper got upset at this thing. And I realized that we were that age where a lot of these kids are when you start to have conversations like this where the eyes glaze over and it's like, no, you're not going to tell me about this. My situation and my life's problems and challenges are so materially different to yours that you don't actually at that age connect the dots and actually realize that it's actually all one journey. Yeah.
At the same time, I think the key is that it's fundamentally different.
Yeah.
So I loved history in high school.
Yeah, me too.
And, British education system at Cambridge. I have studied probably every European era and war that's happened. Very little African history. Right?
Yeah, we didn't have it in our curriculum.
But I remember at some stage reading about colonialism.
Yeah.
And having a moment of being like 16, 17 years old and reading about, colonialism, like World War II. All of Africa was still colony, was still colonized.
Exactly.
And I remember reading this thing and having this moment where I realized that my father lived up till he was in his mid-20s.
Yep.
In colonial Africa.
Yeah.
He lived in the Gold Coast.
I mean, listen to
right? That. And I'm reading about it in a book, and it seems so long ago.
Exactly.
But it wasn't.
Correct.
Right? And then having recently, because Kweku also enjoys history, talking about the Cold War. And for him, and I'm like, dude, like the Cold War was the other day.
Yeah.
Like I lived through the Cold War.
Yeah, exactly.
And having that kind of continuity of like, actually, yeah, it's a similar feeling and experience.
Yeah.
But it's a very different reality for him. Like he's thinking Cold War.
Yeah.
I lived through the Cold War, so I don't think about it as part of history. So yeah, I find that also having children, it's constant recalibration.
Yeah.
Of looking at things from, not looking at things from their perspective, but understanding that the perspective is going to be different to
Correct.
mine. However much I think as the adult that they are flawed.
Yeah.
That the logic is flawed, but kind of going, yeah, but at the same time, their inputs are very different from my inputs.
Correct. Kids will humble you like that. Let me make you laugh. And it was a genuine question, Rory. Sorry, it just always cracks me up when I remember this question. She was like, Dad, back in the ancient times. I'm like, oh, the ancient times. So in my mind, I'm calibrating to 1800. And I was like, oh, so when are the ancient times? Like 1988. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I was already 11 in the ancient times, right? Then she goes, did you guys see in color?
Wow. Yeah.
Humbling. Because, and you could see it was a genuine inquiry. Like, did you guys see in color? I'm like, yes. What did you think? And also, mind you, 1988 is not that long ago. But yeah, humbling, right? Kids. Yeah.
So going to study political science, what did you see? I mean, there's the ideal, there's the principles, there's what you're being educated. What did you see that as, what did you think or what did you feel that was going to do for you? Like once you come out of school, how are you going to craft a life?
Phew. I had visions of being in the diplomatic corps. I've had visions of doing kind of, work in different ministries or rather in different roles in different countries. I quietly had the aspiration of at some point working for the Nelson Mandela Foundation. I had a whole thing going on. And then post school happened, and then you're waiting and you realize, wait a minute, man. I'm trying to get a job here. People are quiet and I need to start making money because I, can't just sit here at mom's house forever, right? And through varsity, the thing that I had done was I had always worked in call centers, and I had kind of built myself up through these call centers where I'd gone from agent to a special help desk where you now become a technical support. And that then became the natural low-hanging fruit for me to kind of at least start earning some kind of income whilst I kind of built out the career, or maybe made the on-ramp back into the diplomatic corps. And very quickly I came out of school and I went to work there's an insurance company that has been acquired a couple times, but back then it was called African Life Assurance, I think it was called, down in Houghton. And I was their supervisor of a business unit there. And there was this lady who was doing a lot of call center consultancy stuff, who within kind of a year and a half of my being there realized that my aptitude was really around kind of the systems, processes, and hardware. And that's what she was doing for the business. And she then said, maybe you should come be one of our consultants. So very quickly, I then moved into a consultancy role where I became essentially a builder of call centers. So, a builder of call centers and an optimizer of call centers. Very far from where I am right now, right? But some great lessons learned there, in so far as, how to optimize through process as well as through kind of technology. So those three pillars, they talk about people, process, and technology. So that chapter of my life was very much around process and technology. And I spent a lot of time just really trying to understand and optimize and work with different clients, be quite an interface specifically around that. But yeah, I'm running away with this here. You asked me what I had in my mind.
So I asked that, and the reason why I asked that was because when all of a sudden Refiloe pitches up, and Refiloe is a music guy, we were all like,
What's this now?
we were all together. We're in spaces. We enjoy music. We enjoy entertainment.
Yeah.
We're primarily consumers of it.
Yeah.
And then everybody's working in their specific spaces, and you had your specific lane.
Yeah.
And you had your specific way of being and way of showing up.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're running a party.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, for a while I was just like,
What
does Refiloe know about music? Like beyond the rest of us.
You know what it was? And I think you guys have Shaga Sisulu to thank for that one. Because he asked me a question that probably was quite flippant for him. He was like, what would you do for no money? And I think possibly I was just at a fork in the road at that point in time. Because for me, the mark of whether or not you are doing something that's purpose-led is how quickly you'll deviate away from it, right? So like now, if at the slightest hint of a sniffle, you're finding a reason to stay home, then maybe you're not living in your purpose at this point in time, right? And I guess I was asking myself a lot of those kind of questions at that point in time. And when he asked me that question, I genuinely paused and I genuinely thought about it. And I genuinely, being an evidence-led person, started to go, okay, let me find the evidence for this. So I was like, I'm passionate about developing people. By the way, this took me like 6 months to answer this question. And the first thing I remember thinking was, okay, I'm passionate about leading people. Where's the evidence for that? And I looked at every role I'd ever been in. And I was always that guy where I will see the superstar in a room, but I see the rough diamond. And I see the one that often is underlooked or overlooked, should I say, who, if just given a little sway, their life trajectory can change. So that became the evidence that I had passionate around developing people. And I was like, I'm passionate about music. And there, there's many people I have to thank for my love for music. yourself included, you had the most amazing alphabetized CD collection that I'd spend hours when you stayed with Duval. Like, if you can remember, I used to sit there and I'd literally look through these titles. Black Stars, then you name them. There's you. Earlier than you, there's kind of the high school guys, Tembane Mabandla, Cleo Zwane, who we just, and Cleo Zwane's dad is actually an unsung hero, because like, if you think about also those inzals that stayed but went out and studied, Cleo's dad would go to like the States. I don't know what university you are studying in, but he'd come back with these tapes. That's how, like, this is mid-80s. No one knows what rap is in America. I mean, in South Africa, okay. But like, he'd bring back like Run DMC, and then he'd bring MTV Raps, videotapes, you know, where we'd see like EPMD, Kumo D, all of these guys. And we're building this little world where we just started to love this thing, right? So there's a lot of people to thank for kind of helping kind of mold this love that I had for this thing, right? And I mentioned just a few, and there are many others. And funny enough, another person I'd probably quote is my older brother. He was the first music collector I knew, right? And then, so I knew I was passionate about music, and then I started to look for the evidence. So that's part of the evidence. But the other part of that evidence was my waking time when I wasn't working was spent around people either creating music or involved in somehow, in some shape or form, in that music value chain. Then I got those two answers and I was like, so now what? Then I spent some time thinking around it. And that party, rest in peace. I remember going to Wandi with this existential crisis, Wandi Nzimande. And for those who probably are too young to remember, Corner, Republic, and Jan Smuts. I don't know if Jan Smuts is still called Jan Smuts now.
I think it is.
It is, ne?
Yeah.
There used to be that mall, which is now like a China mall.
Yeah.
There's a restaurant overlooking Johannesburg. And I remember on that day when I went to go see him, I was like...
At some stage was Jimmy's Prawns. Or
something like that, right? I think it might have been Jimmy's Killer Prawns. So we sat there and we started to sketch out what would be the beginnings of Analog Nights. What I knew in my mind, even when I had the conversation with Wandi, is that we recognized that at that time there was a gap. And funny enough, I think a similar gap has emerged now, where it's the cult of the DJ. Like, when you think about who is front and center of music culture, it's the DJ. And there was literally no spaces or places for people to perform live acoustic music. And it was in that insight and our little doodles that Analog Nights was born. The view I had with Analog Nights was, this was a great way for me to build a lifetime of relationships through creating platforms where people could perform. So it was really around building a solid network that would then allow me to then explore other opportunities. Yeah. And as synchronicity or serendipity would have it at that point in time, another very close childhood friend of mine, Kakelo Mapai, had just left corporate, and he was looking to do some stuff together. And then him and I started to have a conversation. Bless his heart, he had an uncle who was willing to invest in us. And he, from the uncle's seed capital of something like 50 grand, Dream Team South Africa was born. And those two moments, essentially, were the answer from the universe that, in actual fact, now that I'd answered this question for myself, so the trajectory was born. And I literally, a lot of people seem to think that I was, no, that's actually where the professional side of this thing started. I was childhood friends with Kabelo. I was childhood friends with these guys. But professionally, that's where it started. And of course, our first client was TKZ.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of synchronicity, right?
Yeah.
And opening yourself up to the how happening. So I actually just finished a book. I'm always...
Yeah, you're reading like 3 books at a time.
I'm always in this reading for entertainment and then reading to try and figure myself out and do life better, right? But one of the things that crops up a lot and is very front and center, this book I just finished reading, is don't worry about the how. You need to get yourself in in a particular mindset, in a mind frame, and a particular position, kind of emotionally, mentally, etc., for the how to reveal itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to be focused on what it is, where you want to go.
Yeah.
And not, because when we think about the how, what happens, and I do this. I will sit and I will unpack something down to, so if I do this, then this, and this, and then that, and then that, and then that, and then that. And it never happens.
Correct.
And I get so caught up in, if step 2 is difficult for whatever reason, even if it's me just going, I don't have enough time, and self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
Nothing happens because you talk about systems, right? I know that there's 6 steps to this thing.
Yeah.
Now I get stuck at one step.
Yeah.
I never move forward.
True.
But if I just focus on the fact that, okay, this is where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I'm here now.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there.
Exactly.
In between, the synchronicities happen. And I mean, Wendy was always the best person to, I'm sitting with documents where, like, we were working on 21 years of Lakshan culture.
Yeah.
And we were working on a coffee table book.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other things. And I have like notes. But he had the kind of mind where he could take that, like you're saying, like, oh, I have this idea.
Yeah.
And he'd be able to see the bits and pieces and the components and the gaps.
Possibly one of the most visionary human beings I've ever met.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He was my 3rd episode. And he was my 3rd episode because one of the first iterations, or one of my first ideas of a podcast, was called Your Story, without the vowels, because we come from old school hip hop. And I wanted to make it a live event. So the idea was once a month, do an event, charge for it. So I did the first one, it was $50. I charged $50. I think it was like 2 weeks. 2 weeks, so the week before lockdown, or the first hard lockdown.
Yeah.
And I kind of just quickly put it together. And I remember I hired a PA. So 2 speakers, a little desk, microphones. I got them at a good price. And the power went out just before we started. But it was at Black Bistro, which was a small space. So literally there were maybe 15 people there, 15, 20 people there. And so him and I sat on 2 armchairs and we talked like this.
Yeah.
And just before we started, I thought, do you know what? And I put my phone on the table between us and I pressed record on both of them. Because my idea had been, eventually I'd do these things, I'd shoot them, I'd then edit it down, it'd become like a podcast, become like a video.
Correct.
I had a whole, content strategy around the thing. And I had those recordings on my phone. And I started this podcast maybe a year after he passed. And I had the recordings and I thought, you know what? And I contacted his wife. I'm like, would you mind if I shared this thing? And she was like, no, cool. Yeah. So I put it up as 3rd episode for this podcast.
Wow.
And I've never listened to it.
Sure, yeah.
I still haven't listened to it.
It's hard. I can understand why. Yeah, I think it's still hard. Yeah. It's hard. Like, Wendy's just one of those guys where I just kind of feel like, just too soon, And we're 2 weeks apart on the COVID thing. Like, I had it bad. And I remember he was checking on me. As I heal, he gets sick. Yeah. It wasn't I mean, there were very few people. Actually, the only other person outside of my siblings, and that's Wandy for you. I don't even know how he got in. I discover my mom has passed away. This is like 10-ish, 11-ish in the evening. I obviously notify my siblings, but there's a closed loop WhatsApp group that has him, Cleo, Shompo, and Lungi in it. And I sent a message into that group. It wasn't 10 minutes later. I pick my head up, and Wandy was standing by my side. So you've got to understand that I don't talk about it a lot. I don't think I need to. I don't like these eulogies and whatever else, especially with somebody really near and dear. I'll talk about it every once in a while. Like this coming one is going to be a bit wild for me, because if you think about this coming year, I think Wandy would be turning 50 in 2026. So next year is a bit weird for me. As a matter of fact, so much so, I'm actually thinking of doing something in commemoration of that. But before I go there, that's the guy we're talking about. So, he had a very special place in my heart.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, he occupied very interesting roles. I remember when he passed, and you talked to people, and each person felt like they had a special relationship with.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you navigate grief? Are you? I mean, and I ask that knowing that it's a journey, and I ask that kind of knowing I have an idea, but it's still just an idea.
Yeah. Well, look, let's say differently in different situations. My first experience of grief is when I'm 6 years old, when my father passes away. And in retrospect, after doing a lot of work, I realized that I didn't really deal with it. And it shaped so many decisions, poor and otherwise, in my life. It shaped so much rejection complex, fear of failure complex, needs ways that I needed to be validated, that really I spent too much time trying to be validated in those ways. So there's that. Then 2020 happens, and I lose my mom. That one brought me to my knees then. That one there needed me to confront it. There was no going this way and that way. I often say, when people try and remind me of things in 2020, I lost sense of time. Like I can't tell you what was in September, what was in July. I don't know. That year is a blur for me, right? And all the while you're navigating, trying to work, trying to do all of these things. And then if that wasn't bad enough, then the next couple of years it was Wandy, Ricky, Keenan. And each of those people, such special relationships with them, right?
And even people like Kamo.
Kamo was 2 years ago now. Time flies. These are people who you can talk to seminal moments in your life, and they're just gone, right? And even then, with the Ngani that I had, believe it or not, I started therapy this year.
I started 2 years ago, but I stopped about it.
Yeah. And I realized at that point that there were patterns, there were things I was repeating in my life because I kept internalizing pain as opposed to working through it. So in many ways, to answer your question, differently. But I think I'm at a place now where, as a consequence, I think, of the journey that started in 2020 in particular, it led me to therapy. And I think I continue to, but I think that has helped put me in a much better place, just in terms of being comfortable in my skin. Yeah. And that's something just to be said, man. I know I'm probably the typical South African guy, right? Like, we view this therapy thing as if it's weakness.
Yeah.
Right? Until you get there, You start to unpack and unpack, and you probably cry more than you have cried in your whole life when you're going through that episode. But on the other side of this thing, you start to kind of meet a new version of yourself that's not as heavy, you know. And yeah, to those who are watching, who are thinking about it, mate, I'm not even look at the camera here. You need to go to therapy. Like, to be better parents, to be better human beings to other people around you, go to therapy immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's some parallels, but kind of reverse.
Yeah.
Like realizing that I was angry at my mother till I was like 30.
Yeah.
But only discovering as a 30-year-old that I was angry.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
And I'm busy writing something right now, where I'm trying to. Right now, that's my therapy. It's like the writing it down and the journaling. But I'm trying to make sense of how not having my mother has influenced my relationship with women and how I perceive women, and not just romantic relationships, but across the board.
Yeah.
So I'm actually busy writing something. So I've been kind of processing that. But it takes that self-reflection. It takes that finding the support to kind of be able to put our lives into context, and also recognizing the things that are, like you're saying, that we carry and are destructive in a very subtle and nuanced way.
Yeah.
That therefore have led you to kind of this particular point.
Yeah.
And with some of the things that you've done, you wouldn't necessarily have done them if you'd dealt with
that thing.
But the time when you're dealing with it is the time when you're supposed to deal with it. Like, I believe my line is, I am where I am. I'm supposed to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Correct.
Good or bad.
Correct. The Merovingian in The Matrix, second part, there's an interaction where Morpheus, Neo, and Trinity go and have counsel with him. And the meeting doesn't go as Neo intends. And he's in the meeting, he's in the lift leaving with the three of them. And he goes, we could have done this. And Morpheus wisely says, no, Neo, we are exactly where we are supposed to be. Otherwise, we would be dead. And that's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, the journey needed to be exactly what it is. And there's something quite liberating about that, because it frees you from regret. And I could have, woulda, shoulda. And you start to realize that actually it's happened exactly as it was meant to happen. And there's a peace you get from that. Yeah.
There's a book I read years ago growing up, like one of those Dale Carnegie, etc. The old American industrialists. Yeah. And I think the book was called How to Get Rich with Peace of Mind.
Oh.
And I think the first line, I don't remember. I mean, my father was pushing me to read those things. But I remember the first point, like number one, being don't regret anything.
Yeah.
Because when you sit in regret, you'll never have peace of mind.
No. Because the problem is you're replaying something ad infinitum that you have no control over.
Absolutely.
Like, what's the point? You know? Yeah.
So now, I mean, how much of, let's say, the last 20 years, you start Analog Nights, and then Dream Team. And then it feels like from the outside, it's like 20 years, but it feels like each next step was logical. Did things fall into place, or was it like a messy thing? And for example, like you going from your own business and then actually going into the
then,
formal,
then yeah, into corporate. Like
going into corporate. And
I think no, I went to the Summers, and then from the Summers to Sony to MG, back to Sony.
And at the same time, you still have your own businesses. What guided those decisions?
Self-disruption, and in a positive sense. Like, I view 5 to 7 year cycles as S-curves, right? Where there'll be exponential growth, but when you can start to feel you're plateauing, you're going to need to self-disrupt yourself so that you can put yourself onto a fresh S-curve. So I've kind of lived by that principle, where it becomes important, because what do they say? If you aren't disrupting yourself, the world is going to disrupt you.
Yeah.
So I have always been pretty good at knowing that, okay, I'm not sure. Because like you, I'm a creature of, I am hungry to learn. If I'm not learning in a space, I'm plateauing in a space. So when it starts to become mechanized and it's just something you can do with your eyes closed, make space for somebody else to do that thing and go and do something else, So for me, that's kind of what the thought process has always been. And what I've come to realize is, even though for a lot of these times I thought I was a control freak of some kind, the things that happened because they were ordained to happen. When I think about the transition point from Dream Team into doing other stuff, I'd met Sean Watson, who at the time wasn't the CEO of Sony. I think he was second in command to Keith, what's his name? Keith Lister.
Yes.
And, I started picking his brain, because now I'm in this music space and I was looking for mentors. And he was one of those people who is, and still continues to be, one of the most knowledgeable people in the space that I know. And my interactions with him were never around, I want to come and work with you. It was always around, I want to understand this component, I want to understand this component. We have this really big night at the Summers in 2013 or 2013, somewhere there, where Cooley wins the first ever Album of the Year award for a hip-hop album in South African history. And we had won a couple more. And it's a really big night. But I realized very quickly at that point in time, this is a plateau. What's coming next?
How'd you beat that?
You understand? So, and at that point in time, the person who, that seed I'd planted where I started just said, hey, Sean, you're going to be my mentor. He's the one who goes, and actually another person I need to acknowledge is Sipho Sitole, Native Rhythms. Another guy who, for no reason whatsoever, just took a liking and a belief in me. These are like older brother types. And they were like, you are wasted in management. We need you to come and sit in the RISA structures, because we need a new layer, RISA being the Recording Industry of South Africa, kind of acronyms. There's too many of them. So RISA, Recording Industry of South Africa. We need you in those structures. We need young people who are going to start learning about this business so that there's somebody to hand over this business to. And I remember sitting in that room and you're talking about back then, these are guys who, when we looked at them, it's a chasm, right? You're sitting in that room and you're just listening to all of these terms and these things that are being thrown about, and you're like, oh my God, I thought I knew this thing, I really don't. And you start to just sit there and you learn. And these guys literally held my hand through a lot of that stuff. And just for good measure, those two were like, you know what? We think you can run the Summers. Go ahead. Go and do that thing. Because, right? Go do that thing. So in many ways, those guys, I am so grateful for them for allowing me to realize that I was only looking at a small piece of this pie, right? So again, did I ordain that? No, that is provenance. Right? That those two people enter my life. I might have done whatever it is I needed to do. Maybe the Gary Player adage of the fact that I was reading countless books around music and really testing all of these things that I was learning with them might have been the preparation. But that piece is provenance, right? And so then I enter into, because I remember, and when you talk about deep end stuff, it was 5 weeks before the Summers. And we had not enough funding to make it happen that year. So there was the funding piece that we needed to get right, as well as the executional piece that we needed to get right in 5 weeks. The great support that I had, we got it done. That was 2015. The next year, then we basically reprised that role. And at that time, there was a conversation that had already started saying, okay, you've done this now. We need you in the major labels. There's more that you need to learn here. And that's how I then, again, Provenance, joined Sony. And then from there, the rest is history. I think my career is very documented. And quite frankly, a conversation between you and I was never going to be about career, right?
So the interesting thing for me is when you talk about like disruption, because you've gone back to Sony, right? And to be honest, like I remember I sent you a message, congratulations.
Yeah.
I didn't look at what you did before, what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
But for a moment I was like, well, why would he go back? Because back sounds like backwards, right? Like it feels like going backwards. But when you when you talk about the idea of disruption, but I also found that this was my little epiphany while you were speaking, like even though I don't have a traditional career and I've never looked at my life on the basis of what do I do for a living, my career, etc., a part of me was still looking at you going into that space and going, yeah, but he has his own business and he's doing all right. Like, but now reflecting, I'm reflecting, I'm processing as we're sitting here. It's like it actually makes sense because you're not in it to make, it's not the thing, you're not in it to just make a living.
No.
And a lot of times we look at somebody in corporate and go, oh, then they're making a living. But actually there's something in there that is fulfilling, that is scratching an itch, that is opening a certain door, opening a certain perspective. And I'm thinking out loud because I'm recognizing also that despite all I think and all I say, I think about the world, sometimes it's easy for me to fall into the thinking, right? Like, oh, he's gone to corporate. Why would he go to corporate?
Well, to attempt to address that, a couple things. The first thing is a lot of people don't understand just the intricacies of the machine that a major label is. And yes, I might have been in it, but again, it's about slices of pies. And what I looked at was frontline repertoire. Whereas right now, I look at a completely different side of the business. And I look at very different verticals, which have always interested me. And this represents probably a really tremendous period of stretch for me in terms of the stuff that I'm learning that I thought I knew, but I actually don't.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm trying to say to you? So there's that. There's also just the idea that, to your point, this is not cutting a check for me. It's purpose-led living, right? And it comes back to first principles of the two things that I would, like the thing I would do for no money. And for me, when I look at the environment and what I realize increasingly with the number of parents and uncles and aunts that call me to say, I have this, who is, I realize the importance of leaving this environment that I found better than it is. Because for better or worse, every single one of us is going to have a relative or a direct child that is going to operate in this space. And it is incumbent that they find it easier to navigate than we found it.
I mean, I have a son that's in that space. So
I have a daughter. I have a daughter who's in that space.
I still haven't phoned you about him, but like his time will come. I mean, Kweku's been selling beats since he was 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
He's on all the streaming platforms.
You never mentioned this. I know Sean was doing that.
Yeah, they do together.
Oh,
he's known as a producer.
Okay, cool.
He's,
All right,
he's
cool.
Tego the producer.
All right, I'm gonna go check out his stuff.
I've been out in the world and people go, "Oh, Tego's dead."
Oh
Like I'm no
wow.
more, I'm no more Kojo. I'm now so and so's dead.
Yeah, yeah.
I get you, and that actually it makes perfect sense. It's like it's often easy for us to look at spaces and I mean the industry is one because like you eventually went in the middle of it. Many of us we've been on the edges of it. Like we understand it, but we're not in the middle of it. But it's become very easy for us to criticize it from an African perspective, a capitalist perspective, like the conversations around streaming platforms and who's paying what. And it's very easy to have those conversations. But okay, if we all recognize that there's a problem, which one of us is actually going to go in there and fix the problem, which is what you're doing. Whereas the rest of us, like I said, it's easy to kind of just sit and go, yeah, no, this thing is...
Yeah. And we've become that generation, right? Like I, these days, increasingly more and more catch myself where I want to add a 2-cent opinion to something that I'm on the periphery of. Like, mate, you know what? If anybody has an opinion that they can espouse loudly about the presidency, that's articulable. Let her have that opinion. Me, I know it from the periphery, chief. I have no idea what his pressures are. You understand what I'm trying to say to you? And everybody has an opinion. And we've become that generation of people who have a ton of opinions, but are not willing to test that with any degree of diving a little deeper to test your own rationale. Because we've become self-publishers. I, today, depending on my following, could have an opinion that will have more engagement than Kojo, who writes for a living. But because I happen to have more followers than him, people are going to take my opinion as if it's supposed to mean something. So I think that's really it. And that's really where purpose-led living goes to, right? Is to go and say, okay, this is the thing I was meant to do. So let me go and do it and let me gain mastery on this thing. Yeah.
What's exciting you right now?
Exciting me right now? Sure. I'm excited by young people that I meet that I'm talking about in my professional spaces where I'll have a view and I'll have a view that says this, then somebody says something else. I think about it for a second and I go, I never thought about that. Do people swear on your podcast? I've been very mindful not to use...
They do occasionally.
Okay, cool. That's fine. I'll stay as the non-swearers. We'll have like those kind of opinions or views or perspectives or approaches that make you go, oh, wow. Okay, cool. This is a completely new thing that my geek brain will go, okay, I see and can connect all the dots. So I'm excited by that new energy of people that can really make a meaningful change in whatever space they're in. Definitely excited about that. I'm excited about like just watching or stewarding human beings to adulthood. As scary as it is, especially as girls hit teenage years, it's like a hair-raising experience. Actually, we've got daughters that are exactly the same age, a few months apart. And you're like, what happened to my monotone, predictable emotion person who's now, a tripwire of things that I might say that might upset them. So I'm excited about that journey and realizing that, wow, I'm actually stewarding people into adulthood. Super excited about that. I'm 48. I'm excited about 50. I'm quietly excited about that. Like I watch you guys and it's fascinating to watch like Tabang and the space he's in now and what a different human being he is. There's something, I think 50 for us is like 40 for women. It's a truly existential age. It's like, okay, yeah.
For me, the two pivotal ages, so 30 was pivotal.
Yeah.
because I remember at 30, I don't know if I've talked about this before. So the closest my father ever got to sex talk or anything else was, he said two things. One was, I let you go out, don't disappoint me. I think I was like 18, 19 years old, and I was allowed to run the streets of my city earlier than most of my friends. But I remember him also saying, as men, we mature later than women. So if you get married, you should only be thinking about that at like 27, 28. So it was something that stuck with me. But I remember turning 28 and so much was going on in my life. Because I was the planner. I knew where I was going to be in 3 years from now, in 5 years from now, in 10 years. I was building constantly. And at 28, which was the year 2000, I mean, I'd moved to Joburg basically with a car.
Ruler one.
Yeah. I moved to Joburg with a car and some money. I'd been working with the family. I disappointed my father and left the family businesses. And I was just trying to figure it out. And everything was thrown up in the air. So 28 to 30. Like at 30, it felt like, okay, I had a plan. And then I hit this mini existential crisis, like 28, 29. And I threw everything up in the air. And then I hit 30 and it's like, actually, do you know what? This is what's sticking. This is where I'm going to go. 40 was cool. But 50 has made me understand old people better. And the thing that I understand about old people is how they have 0 F's to give. I've always had very few because of the nature of my personality.
Absolutely.
And then at each decade, I lose
a few more.
If you lose a few more. And then I hit 50 and it was like, that's it. I'm done. Like, I've run out. Like
this pack of F's is done and I'm throwing it away.
But I remember, like, my father would call Zwaya.
I'm going to call him that now.
And it used to irritate me to no end. I'll tell him, this is Refiloe. And he'll be like, oh, Tebo. And it used to irritate me. And he was not bothered. And I always remember the Mandela's, the memorial at the stadium. Where, Obama and all these people were there.
Yes, I remember.
And I remember the Bish Desmond Tutu getting on and going, hey! Basically, na khalemela. Because people had been talking and making noise during the speeches. And I remember being on social media and people are going, he's embarrassing us. Why is he reprimanding these people? And I was like, actually, what are you going to do to him? Like, there is absolutely nothing you can say to an older person or do to them. They've lived their full life.
Exactly, man.
They've been through so many experiences. Like, what are you going to say or do?
Exactly.
And I'm reaching that point where it's just like, okay, chief, so what? It doesn't pay my children's school fees. That's my life. It's like, okay, do you want to do this? Or you can go there. Or if I give you this, you can give me that. I'm like, it does not pay my children's school fees. Me, end of the month, I'm thinking about children's school fees.
100%. There's a guy growing up in our teens. I think he used to just do this to press people's buttons, but his response actually kind of is the mantra now. Like, name was Umuzi. He used to be friends with a guy called Uwe. If he's one at you, Kloof. Like, say you start shouting at him, blah, 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 and he'll look at you at him, manje.
Basically.
So that's the old folk thing. Manje. So what, chief? Exactly that. No, that's exactly it. For me, just to kind of watch that. And again, the more of the stuff you remove from yourself, the greater the space for peace, you just become more about the internal validation. The external validation is nice, but it's not going to change anything, quite frankly, at all.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mama.
Brother, it was such a pleasure. I'm so glad we did this. And sorry, I'm just going to throw shade on one of our friends on a certain project. You know yourself.
I'm going to leave this in.
Can we get working? Okay.
I'll add the second part. I've tried to get him on the podcast.
Aha.
And he's turned me down.
No. He's definitely doing that too.
And he's come with stories.
No. 26 is the year of no stories on me.
And then he'll say, but then you had, like his young boys that he's mentored.
Yeah.
I've had them on the podcast. It's like, oh, you had so-and-so on the podcast. I'm like, Chief, but you refused.
Yeah.
I said, please come.
Exactly.
You refused.
So both of us are throwing 26. Okay. Thank you, brother. Really
Thanks,
awesome cool. Conversation. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.